Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the Commanders rookie class and some, just kind of looking over each guy and the expected, possible contributions from this year, where they kind of stand going into training camp. We're going to talk a lot about that now, but that's what I wrote about. If you want to just go read it, it's on ESPN.com. So go ahead, go over there, check it out, and then I'll be talking about it now in a minute. And if you want to become a club member, club membership's we're going to get a lot more serious as we get into training camp. Going to be doing a lot of private Zooms for you gold members and a lot of stuff, and I'll get I had Logan Paulson on in June. I'm going to get some other guys on in August, and throughout the season, hopefully getting like one guy every month to come on to those private Zooms that most of the time it's going to be a former player or somebody that would be valuable that you'd want to hear from. So anyways, join there. You want to do that, go to Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, find the club membership you're comfortable with, and go from there. So let's get into that rookie class. And by the way, on Monday, I'm going to be talking to Nikki Jabal from the Washington Post as we look ahead to training camp. The veterans report on Tuesday. They start practice on Wednesday. So finally, we're back, baby. So, but today it's all about the rookie class. And I'm not sure exactly which day this one is airing. So suffice to say, the rookies report on Thursday. Their first practice is on Friday. So let's get into the rookie class, because this is a very, very important rookie class for this franchise. If they hit, this will be a foundational rookie class for this franchise, and it's going to allow them to build going forward and create finally for you guys, a sustainable winning situation. Now, it's going to be a while before we see if that's actually going to be the case. We'll get a lot of clues this summer, but if this class hits, starting with Jayden Daniels, I mean, you get the quarterback that you haven't had in forever, right? And it's going to start there, but it's not just him. That's why I'm going to go over each of these guys, because there are a handful of guys who could be key parts to this franchise moving forward. And, I'm going to start with, it's funny, for ESPN, we're going to have training camp previews that run. I think it's on Tuesday for every team. So look for, 53-man roster projection, which is a hell of a thing to do, because I don't have any clue. And most people, there are a lot of guys I think are on them that are going to be very interesting this summer. So it's really hard, probably as hard going into training camp as it's been in a long time, because of the changeover in staff, the changeover in administration, and it's just a lot to learn. So a lot of mistakes are going to be made from my end as far as roster projection, but you try to do it, and there's going to be some interesting roster decisions, and Nikki and I kind of get into some of that as well. So tune into that on Monday. But again, I go back to how important this class is, but the biggest offseason addition to me, which I get into for ESPN, is Adam Peters, because everything starts from there. They have set up a power triumvirate, owner, GM, coach, that's as strong as I think that going into the season, going right now, it appears to be as strong as they've had in a long time. Certainly, it surpasses anything over the last 24 years. Even when Joe Gibbs was here, you didn't have the people above him who could then take what he did and build on it. So, and you almost had it with John Schneider and Marty Schottenheimer, but the owner decided to go to Steve Spurrier and then get rid of John Schneider. So there you go. That's why they didn't win under Dan Snyder. But it's really good now, potentially, right? And Peters is why Dan Quinn is here. Dan Quinn is why guys like Darryl Tapp, Ken Norton Jr., Anthony Lynn, why they're here. Then the reason why Bobby Wagner is here is because of Dan Quinn and Ken Norton. It goes on down the line. There's a Tyler Biadasz. I don't know that maybe he comes here still, but I think that familiarity with the coaches, with the players, but the players with the coaches, Anthony Lynn, Austin Eckler, guys like that. It's all that stuff makes a difference. And it's why there's more energy in this building than there's been in a while. What it means for this year, I don't know. But I think long-term, I think they have the right people in charge, I believe. And that's not just, again, it's coaching staff as well. If all you did was hire a big name coach, but he doesn't get a good staff, it's not going to work, right? You have to have the staff. And I feel like the staff is so far is just better than it's been in a while. So I think on both sides of the ball. So I think like the pieces are there, but it's still going to come down to, did they get these players right in this draft class? Because we all know, like, free agency, they really didn't use it. They weren't using free agency to build the roster. They're using it to supplement. And I think that's a good way to do it. It's why they weren't going to go out and get, a couple. I mean, they got a couple big names. They didn't spend for big names like Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz. They weren't wildly expensive by any means. And they're not counting them as anything like, hey, come here, be a leader for a year, help build the foundation, and then see where they go. They only have 1-year deals. So the foundational pieces should come from this rookie class. And if you get it right, you can finally set this franchise up to have some long-term success, because you could have the quarterback, the left tackle, you get the tight end, right? You get a couple, maybe an interior pass rusher in Johnny Newton. So let's go over each of these guys and maybe a couple guys that might kind of emerge, whether it's roster or even the practice squad, as guys to watch down the road. So obviously Jayden Daniels is going to be the number one target here, and they're the number one object of curiosity, because if he doesn't progress, you might get all these other pieces, but you're still going to need the quarterback. If he progresses and the other ones don't, you got the quarterback. So you want the quarterback. And that's why he is extremely important to what's going to happen here. Press people in the spring with his work ethic, on-field decision-making. The things you want to see this summer is, like, you don't want to see hesitation. You didn't see it in the spring. So does he continue to make decisive throws, right? Is he not running that much in 7-on-7 or even full team stuff? Because if you're running too much as a quarterback, it means you're maybe not reading it right. And if you're running a couple of times, okay. A lot, which I've seen other guys do, saw too much of that from Robert, and even in 2015. And that's when it's when you knew it was kind of like, okay, this maybe isn't headed in the right way. But you don't want to see that as a quarterback. Now, again, sometimes it's going to happen because it just does. But if it's consistently happening, that becomes a problem. So he didn't do that in the spring a lot. Does that continue? Because more stuff is going to be implemented or worked on this summer. So that was a good sign. The accuracy, we saw that, right? But the other thing is, to me, the big thing with him is the work ethic. And Nikki and I talk a little bit about this for Monday, so tune in for that. But one thing that we did talk about, she mentioned it, and, I'd heard the same thing, that after the ESPYs, he goes and gets the award. I think he had to kind of be nudged to go there, but he goes and gets the award, and then he leaves because he wants to be back in time for the next morning's training session. That's what you have here. And, you can't, that doesn't guarantee he's going to be really, really good. But Logan Paulson said this in the private Zoom I did with gold members back in June. You can't be good. Just doing that alone doesn't guarantee you're going to be good, but you can't be good unless you do that. So he does that. Then the rest is going to be, some of it's going to be on the franchise to surround himself with the better players. Some of it's going to be, are you good enough, right? But I think, then it's incumbent on the franchise to also help him out. So, but he's going to end up starting. They're not going to announce him as a starter right away. They're not going to say, I doubt, it could well be that they wait until after the third preseason game to officially announce him as a starter. But let's be real. I mean, they drafted him number 2 overall for a reason. They love the kid. He's shown all the signs. He's shown the maturity. And I will say, I've also heard that Marcus Mariota has been really good with him. I know people close to Daniels feel like he's been a really good mentor for Daniels. So I think that bodes well. But again, we know he's going to be the guy, just a matter of when they officially announce it. So some of the other ones, Johnny Newton, I don't know, as I record this, don't know if how his physical is going to go as he recovers from that Jones. He had the surgery on the Jones fracture on his left foot, partial Jones fracture. And so I don't know what his status will be as I record this, but whatever it is, when he's healthy, when he's right, he's going to be backing up Allen and Payne. And if he does well, you got a replacement. If you wanted to part ways with John Allen after this year, if that's the direction they go, I don't know. That's just obviously when you draft a guy there, either you got the replacement or you have really good depth for a couple of years until you're ready to then move forward with him as a starter. So, but he gives you a pass rush inside, but he's going to play a role at least as the number 3 defensive tackle in those pass rush situations. Ben Sinnott, well, they want to use 2 tight end sets. I've talked about this a lot. When Cliff Kingsbury was in Arizona, I think it was during his time there, they ran the 9th most pass plays with 2 tight end sets. So you sign Zach Ertz, you draft Ben Sinnott. John Bates, blocking tight end, Cole Turner, 13 catches in 2 years. Can't count on him. So that's why you have those guys. So Sinnott is going to play a key role as well. And he gives you the run ability after the catch, and he can block from a fullback. He can block from fullback. He can block from, in line. He can run routes from the slot. So there's versatility there that Ertz can also offer some of that. He's not going to block in the back. He's not the fullback type, right? But that's where you get Sinnott. And then the other one that's interesting to watch here, like Armani Rogers, but also Colson Yankoff. He's an undrafted free agent. He at times looked pretty good in the spring. Looked like a guy like, could he challenge a Cole Turner for a roster spot? If nothing else, keep him around in the practice squad, see what he does. If Turner at least emerges. Now in the spring, Turner was working a lot ahead of him. We'll see where that goes. But I think that's a guy to at least watch to see if you want to look at some undrafted who could make a little bit of noise, you got to put him on the list for right now, right? So we'll go there. Then you got Mike Samerstill. I think if you look at the corner position, there are a lot of questions all over. I think the one question I don't have is who is going to be in the slot? And he's still got to go out and show it. I like how patient he was at the line with his feet. I think that's always important. I liked Quan Martin like that last year, but they really like Samerstill, and he's a guy clearly is going to be here. So I would expect him to go in there, obviously, and be that third corner, that slot corner. Got to earn it. Got to show you can do it, because you do have some other guys that, could you put Quan Martin there if he's not doing it, if he's not doing it well enough? But to me, he's like a defensive player, Terry McLaurin, a guy who can change the culture. And then because of his approach, because of his, he can be maybe a little bit better than people think because of just the way he approaches things, but culture changer as well, I think. So I think he's an eventual leader in that defensive backs room. I don't think you come in and be that guy as a rookie. There's way too much to learn, but I think he's a guy, clearly he's going to have a big role. Same with Brandon Coleman. And, I think if you get this right, now you got your left tackle. If you don't, you're going to have to go get one in the offseason, and possibly also a right tackle if Andrew Wiley plays like he did last year. So, but Coleman could really set that up. And just because he's not a first-round pick doesn't mean he can't do it, because there have been first-round picks throughout this league at tackle who have failed or been moved inside. But we have to see for him, can he not only be a left tackle, is he, some teams thought he was better at guard. This team feels tackle. So can he do that? And then can he become a quality starting left tackle in the NFL? To be determined. So we'll get a lot of clues this summer, but that's where he, so again, another guy who, if you hit on him, if he can be a quality starting left tackle, you don't need Pro Bowlers all over the place. You want a good one. We know the importance, but there's a lot of other spots in the line that you got to get it right. That's one of them. But if he become a quality starting left tackle, because then it would not only be big because it's a left tackle, but also like it's a premium position. So if you don't have to spend huge at quarterback, at left tackle, you're now putting yourself in a better spot over the next few years to spend at some other spots before those other big contracts come due, right? So that's why that would be a big deal if he can hit. But again, another guy that can set up and become part of that foundation. And if he's not good enough at tackle, but he can play guard, maybe you got that guy, but you still then got to go get the tackle at some point, whether, in the offseason, you're not going to find the guy you want after the final cuts. It just would be very hard to imagine that you get a guy who would be nothing more than a placeholder, and you still in the offseason have to then go get a guy. So if Coleman hits, good for them. Luke McCaffrey, right now you kind of go into camp thinking he's a third or fourth receiver, depending on how they view like Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown. But he obviously drafted in third round. They really like him. So I think he's going to play a key role here. And just see, I'm curious to watch, it looks like a pretty good route runner. I like how he catches the ball. There's sometimes I think with the little things like I'm curious to see what he picks up from like a Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson, the way they run their routes, and the way they use their head. For example, when you're running right at a guy a couple of times I'd see Luke drop his head a little bit. You want to maintain that eye contact and kind of fool him with that, right? So like it's a little thing, but one of those, there's some subtle things I think he's probably still learning about that position that can make a difference. So, but he's a guy, certainly a guy to watch. And could he be, I think you just need a guy who can be a solid NFL receiver, and he can run spots, I think, from slot, he can run it from the Z, and just, so I think that's going to be his role. So there you go. But another guy that could certainly contribute. Then you start getting into guys like Jordan McGee, Dominique Hampton. I'm going to lump those two together because I view them both as backups, clearly as backups going in. Linebacker, you have Wagner and Luvu, but McGee has an ability to blitz. They like his coverage. I felt like in college, some of that coverage, like I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But, I think as a blitzer, he certainly looked like he could be a guy that can help. So is he a guy that can ascend to a higher role after this year, right? Does his improvement, what does that mean for Jamin Davis? But I think he's a guy that, like, he's a big dude. And I think he could be a guy that, again, he's one of those guys to watch as a starting type, maybe a year or two from now. And, the league is littered with guys who are 5th and 6th round linebackers, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks who end up to be really good. And I think, could he be in that guy? Maybe. We'll see. But I do think there's some skills to watch. And one thing I like is that they're very specific on some of the things they liked about these guys. Like, they like his blitzing ability. They did like his coverage ability. So they have specific ideas in mind for what they want from that position. Always good. And then how they want to develop him, always good. So we'll see. But again, he goes into camp as a backup. You have safety Dominique Hampton. He's another guy I like for what I think they're going to do with him, which is watch what they do with Jeremy Chim, and then picture Dominique Hampton possibly being that guy in 2025 or 2026, whenever. Because I think, they're both like 6'3", 220. So they both have that ability to go and play in the box with some size. Like, you can put a guy in there, but you want to have some size with them. And I think both those guys offer that, but that's what Dominique Hampton can do. And you saw it when he was playing in college at Washington, like, he can handle that stuff. And so I think he's going to be a fun guy to see develop. Another guy at that position is Tyler Owens, another undrafted free agent. They gave him, they gave him a good deal as an undrafted free agent. Don't use that. Like, same thing with Sam Hartman. Don't use that as oh my God, he's a lock now because they did this. Those guaranteed deals aren't that much money, where if you don't keep them, that it's, oh my gosh, you gave them a $3 million bonus. No, we're talking a few $100,000 in guaranteed money. Yeah, that's, you don't want to cut them, but it's not prohibitive. So you can cut and put them on the practice squad if that's what they want. But Owens is another guy because he's got some size, and he was another priority signing, I think, as an undrafted free agent. Then you have Javonte Jean-Baptiste as a developmental pass rush type. So he's the one guy I'm not sure, because you got other developmental pass rush types that were here. KJ Henry, Jones, Andre Jones, of course. So where does he fit with that group? Now, when it's your draft pick, you typically fit better, right? But, I think I'll be curious to see how he progresses in camp. But he's a guy that's a developmental guy for the future, just like the other two I just talked about, maybe even a little bit more so. Showed a little bit more flashes at Notre Dame in that role than he did at Ohio State. But I think he's got some of that skill that to see, how do you develop with here? And that's going to be the key for him, is development. Then, I brought up Sam Hartman. Oh, I know the other guy I want to talk about, Chigozie Anuzium, the cornerback. It's funny because he made a handful of plays in the spring. Like, who was that? Oh, it's Chigozie again. So I'm going to put him as a guy to watch. I don't know that he cracks the 53, but I think he's certainly a guy that, a good practice squad guy to try to develop, right? So I think he's another guy that I would put on there. Sam Hartman, I don't know that they keep 3 quarterbacks. I think it's going to be hard to do that when you look at the roster where you may have to cut. So I would, you can have Jayden and then Mariota, and you got to see, like, does he should do things to not just warrant, you got to show that you warrant a spot on the 53 ahead of maybe an extra cornerback, for example, or an extra safety or an extra running back. So that's he's in competition with those guys. I think that's going to be hard. And I could see him being a practice squad guy. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe he plays so well that it's like, oh, you don't want to expose him, because maybe he does enough to show that Mariota's on 1-year deal. Maybe you look at Hartman and say, oh, hey, he's doing all right. You could be the backup to Daniels down the road. So But I don't know that we saw anything in the spring that would suggest that it's going to be that kind of situation, but we'll see. And, but that would be the expected role for him is, can you win a practice? Really right now I look at, obviously he'd want to get on the 53, but can he become a practice squad guy that they want to keep around and develop, much like a Jake Fromm, they in the previous regime, et cetera. So anyways, that's the look at the rookie class. Again, it could be a foundational class if they have, and this, that's why no pressure, folks, but this is a class that if you really want to set this franchise up, you got to get a lot of these right. And I think that's what will be fun to watch during camp and throughout the season is, did they do that? Because if they did, then you can start to look and say, okay, now you got something. It's funny because I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks on their podcast, always really good insight. Like I love listening to those two. I think they're very smart, but they kind of went over the NFC East teams. They did like breakdowns of like, who's a blue chip player, who's a green dot player, purple, like, and blue is obviously the best. And then green would be the next. When they went over the Commanders roster, they didn't give them any blue chips. Now there are a couple guys who are maybe close or, but maybe got greens, but I think the guys who can ascend to that, Jayden Daniels can ascend to that, could one of these other guys, could a Newton or Sanders or Sinnott, could they ascend to that? We'll see, but they didn't have, like, they need more of those kind of guys. And this class can set the tone for this season, but more so for the future. Did they get it right? And I think that's what'll be fun to watch as the season develops, because how many games to win, I don't know, but so much of this is about the development of the program. And I know you guys have been patient for a long time. I think they're going to ask you to be a little bit more patient, but there is a honeymoon period for this group. And I think the last group didn't know how to outrun the past. I think this group is like, hey, they weren't here. They didn't create this mess. They're trying to make it better. And this is the way they feel is the best way to do it. But it starts with this rookie class. So that's it for me, folks. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, I'll be back on Monday with Nikki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. Talk to you next time.